Don't forget, lonely on Halloween? Tired of the dark, scary, spooky aspects of Halloween? Then don't tune into the Rocket Radio Show. Don't forget, Halloween night, Rocket Radio. Who's on that? It's crazy.
The scene? Bruce. Blood and people scattered everywhere. We don't know what to do. We've never had a massacre of this proportion. All of them with their heads chopped off.
Everybody.
It was an ordinary Halloween night when we came upon the street and didn't see a single porch light. It must be where the goody-goodies live, thinking that they too good to get candy to little kids. I'm not little or a child by any means, but I brought my pillowcase and I'm down for the trick-or-treats. No treats means tricks for y'all. I got an axe in a bag that'll shatter your skull. Hoping I'ma be more precise with mine. I'm thinking underneath the jaw, take 'em at the neckline. One good swing with a thug to follow. Leave 'em underneath the drain, the legend of Sleepy Hollow. That's a lot of blood, you gon' wanna get a towel and wrap it around your neck like a makeshift towel. Blood clots up in 3 minutes flat. You done wasted 2 of them lying dead on your back.
Knock, knock, open up the door.
Oh, we kick that bitch in and leave you dead on the floor.
I'm a flying stone.
I'ma take that bitch home.
And put a candle up his nose and watch that shit glow.
Come on, knock, knock.
The window works too.
We gon' slip right through and be standing behind you.
I'ma cut her dome off.
Then watch your hand roll off.
And sit with the body till it turn blue like Solo.
First house I'm hitting is next door. Call the cops 'cause of the weed I grow. Up the porch and through the front window. I'ma hide in the closet where nobody knows. Hop out so fast that I float. Let my hand connect to his throat and I'm ghost. Next house is right behind me. Had the nerve to sell me a fake bag of tree. Up the porch and down this chimney like Santa, except I got a big machete. It's like Christmas when I kill on Halloween, but my bag's full of hands of people who cross me. Rather than instead of a bunch of candy, I can use them all for pumpkins like Jay and Shaggy. I'm bad news like All Hallows Eve, and when the two mix, it's over with for my enemies. Knock, knock,
Open up the door.
oh, we kick that bitch in and leave you dead on the floor.
I'm a flying stone.
I'ma take that bitch
And
home.
put a candle up his nose and watch that shit glow.
Come on, knock, knock.
The window works too.
We gon' slip right through and be standing behind you.
I'ma cut her dome
Then
off.
watch your hand roll
And
off.
sit with the body till it turn blue like Solo.
It's Halloween in Detroit.
Looking for the dangerous, creepy, crooked strangers, the nameless, mysterious, could be fucking stranglers, low lifes, letdowns, outcasted citizens, never got no dividends, caught up in some shit again, the ugly, thugly, scrubby, fuck bubbly, mean and quiet, inside they wanna riot, can't deny it, can't buy it, the gumps and the kooky, too short, too tall, scary and the spooky, played, underpaid, the never had it made, the never getting laid, sipping haterade, calling all the clowns who ain't funny. The this Halloween goes out to the scary kids. Get yours to Halloween. This is the night we make the world scream. When we unite, it's as scary as thing. We hunt as an army. We all the teens. Scary kids. Get yours to Halloween. This is the night we make the world scream. When we unite, it's as scary as thing. We hunt as an army. We all the teens. The mad weak, whack creeps, smack cheeks, the fat freaks, sad geeks, and black sheeps, the left back, held back, the sent back, those who lacked, flipped out and cracked, the rejected, infected, lonely and erected, those who wrecked it, the never respected, the bad ones dropped out, wild outs, no style, last pick, throwaways, flopped offs, no smiles, criminals and convicts, beggars and sluts, numbnuts, dumb putts, dickheads and cunts. I'm calling all of us for a Halloween bash. Scary kids, let us come together at last. Scary kids, get yours to Halloween. This is the night we make the world scream. When we unite, it's as scary as thing. We hunt as an army. We all the teens. Scary kids, get yours to Halloween. This is the night we make the world scream. When we unite, it's as scary as thing. We hunt as an army.
I got a scary forehead, terrifyingly big. You wouldn't like it if I headbutt your wig. Absolutely spookalicious, violent and vicious. Scare you into shock, you'll shoot some stew in your britches. I'm wicked's in the air, but I'm scary all the time. I kick it with the wicked, respected like Frankenstein. It's candy can't get time, but I'ma shake 'em from behind. And spank 'em something fine and fucking thank 'em with the knife. This is our night, come up out your tomb. On the streets we loom, or hiding in your room. The Walking Dead are near and all of a sudden we stray. Even though you're too late, I think that's great. I walk around like Jason Voorhees, stabbing and choking. Every Halloween, we piece together the broken, and we become the masses. Your pain is in my heart. This one is for the scary kids out there in the dark. Come on. Scary kids, get yours to Halloween. This is the night we make the world scream. When we unite, it's as scary as thing. We hunt as an army. We all the teens. Scary kids, get yours to Halloween. This is the night we make the world scream. When we unite, it's as scary as thing. We hunt as an army. We all the teens. Scary kids. This is the night when we unite, and we hunt as an army. We all the teens. Scary kids.
That's what happens when it's your own side. It's only interrogation when it's the enemy. They teach you how to resist the enemy, how to protect your mind and spirit. They don't teach you how to resist your own people, especially people who think they're trying to help you see the truth. They didn't break me. I broke myself. I wanted to believe them, and I wanted them to help me. I was a good soldier, well-trained, experienced. I knew what I could do to my fellow human beings and what they could do to me. I thought I was ready for anything.
He looks out at the valley, his eyes unfocused.
Who in his right mind could have been ready for this?
The Amazon rainforest, Brazil. I arrived blindfolded, so as not to reveal my host's location. Outsiders call them the Yanomami, the fierce people, and it is unknown whether this supposedly warlike nature, or the fact that their new village hangs suspended from the tallest trees, was what allowed them to weather the crisis as well, if not better, than even the most industrialized nation. It is not clear whether Fernando Oliveira, the emaciated, drug-addicted white man from the edge of the world, is their guest, mascot, or prisoner.
I was still a doctor. That's what I told myself. Yes, I was rich and getting richer all the time, but at least my success came from performing necessary medical procedures. I wasn't just slicing and dicing little teenage noses or sewing Sudanese pintos onto she-boy pop divas. I was still a doctor. I was still helping people. And if it was so immoral to the self-righteous, hypocritical North, why did their citizens keep coming? The package arrived from the airport an hour before the patient, packed in ice in a plastic picnic cooler. Hearts are extremely rare, not like livers or skin tissue, and certainly not like kidneys, which, after the presumed consent law was passed, you could get from almost any hospital or morgue in the country.
Was it tested?
For what? In order to test for something, you have to know what you're looking for. We didn't know about walking plague then. We were concerned with conventional ailments, hepatitis or HIV/AIDS, and we didn't even have time to test for those.
Why is that?
Because the flight had already taken so long. Organs can't be kept on ice forever. We were already pushing our luck with this one.
Where had it come from?
China, most likely. My broker operated out of Macau. We trusted him. His record was solid. When he assured us that the package was clean, I took him at his word. I had to. He knew the risks involved, so did I, so did the patient. Herr Muller, in addition to his conventional heart ailments, was cursed with the extremely rare genetic defect of dextrocardia with situs inversus. His organs lay in their exact opposite position. The liver was on the left side, the heart entryways on the right, and so on. You see the unique situation we were facing. We couldn't have just transplanted a conventional heart and turned it backward. It just doesn't work that way. We needed another fresh, healthy heart from a donor with exactly the same condition. Where else but China could we find that kind of luck?
It was luck?
And political expediency. I told my broker what I needed, gave him the specifics, and sure enough, 3 weeks later, I received an email simply titled, "We have a match."
So you performed the operation?
I assisted. Dr. Silver performed the actual procedure. He was a prestigious heart surgeon who worked the top cases at the Hospital Israelita Albert Einstein in Sao Paulo. Arrogant bastard, even for a cardiologist. It killed my ego to have to work under that prick, treating me like I was a first-year resident. But what was I going to do? Herr Muller needed a new heart, and my beach house needed a new herbal jacuzzi. Herr Muller never came out of the anesthesia. As he lay in the recovery room, barely minutes after closing, his symptoms began to appear. His temperature, pulse rate, oxygen saturation. I was worried, and it must have tickled my more experienced colleague. He told me that it was either a common reaction to the immunosuppressant medication or the simple expected complications of an overweight, unhealthy, 67-year-old man who'd just gone through one of the most traumatic procedures in modern medicine. I'm surprised he didn't pat me on the head, the prick. He told me to go home, take a shower, get some sleep, maybe call a girl or two, relax. He'd stay and watch him and call me if there was any change.
Oliveira purses his lips angrily and chews another wad of the mysterious leaves at his side.
And what was I supposed to think? Maybe it was the drugs, the OKT3, or maybe I was just being a worrier. This was my first heart transplant. What did I know? Still, it bothered me so much that the last thing I wanted to do was sleep. So I did what any good doctor should do when his patient is suffering. I hit the town. I danced, I drank, I had salaciously indecent things done to me by who knows who or what. I wasn't even sure it was my phone vibrating the first couple of times. It must have been at least an hour before I finally picked up. Graziella, my receptionist, was in a real state. She told me that Herr Muller had slipped into a coma an hour before. I was in my car before she could finish the sentence. It was a 30-minute drive back to the clinic, and I cursed both Silva and myself every second of the way. So I did have reason to be concerned. So I was right. Ego, you could say. Even though to be right meant dire consequences for me as well, I still relished tarnishing the invincible Silva's reputation. I arrived to find Graziella trying to comfort a hysterical Rosie, one of my nurses. The poor girl was inconsolable. I gave her a good one across the cheek. That calmed her down. And asked her what was going on. Why were there spots of blood on her uniform? Where was Dr. Silva? Why were some of the other patients out of their rooms? And what the hell was that goddamn banging noise? She told me that Herr Muller had flatlined, suddenly and unexpectedly. She explained that they had been trying to revive him when Herr Muller had opened his eyes and bitten Dr. Silva on the hand. The two of them struggled. Rosie tried to help, but was almost bitten herself. She left Silva, ran from the room, and locked the door behind her. I almost laughed. It was so ridiculous. Maybe Superman had slipped up, misdiagnosed him if that was possible. Maybe he'd just risen from the bed and, in a stupor, had tried to grab onto Dr. Silva to steady himself. There had to be a reasonable explanation. And yet there was the blood on her uniform and the muffled noise from Herr Muller's room. I went back to the car for my gun, more so to calm Graziella and Rosie than for myself.
You carried a gun?
I lived in Rio. What do you think I carried, my Pinto? I went back to Herr Muller's room. I knocked several times. I heard nothing. I whispered his and Silva's names. No one responded. I noticed blood seeping out from under the door. I entered and found it covering the floor. Silva was lying in the far corner, Muller crouching over him with his fat, pale, hairy back to me. I can't remember how I got his attention, whether I called his name, uttered a swear, or did anything at all but just stand there. Muller turned to me, bits of bloody meat falling from his open mouth. I saw that his steel sutures had been partially pried open, and a thick, black, gelatinous fluid oozed through the incision. He got shakily to his feet, lumbering slowly toward me. I raised my pistol, aiming at his new heart. It was a Desert Eagle, Israeli, large and showy, which is why I'd chosen it. I'd never fired it before, thank God. I wasn't ready for the recoil. The round went wild, literally blowing his head off. Lucky, that's all, this lucky fool standing there with a smoking gun and a stream of warm urine running down my leg. Now it was my turn to get slapped, several times by Graziella, before I came to my senses and telephoned the police.
Were you arrested?
Are you crazy? These were my partners. How do you think I was able to get my homegrown organs? How do you think I was able to take care of this mess? They're very good at that. They helped explain to my other patients that a homicidal maniac had broken into the clinic and killed both Herr Muller and Dr. Silva. They also made sure that none of the staff said anything to contradict that story.
What about the bodies?
They listed Silva as the victim of a probable carjacking. I don't know where they put his body. Maybe some ghetto side street in the city of God. A drug score gone bad just to give the story more credibility. I hope they just burned him or buried him deep.
Do you think he...
I don't know. His brain was intact when he died. If he wasn't in a body bag, if the ground was soft enough, how long would it have taken him to dig out?
He chews another leaf, offering me some. I decline. And Mr. Muller?
No explanation. Not to his widow, not to the Austrian embassy, just another kidnapped tourist who'd been careless in a dangerous town. I don't know if Frau Muller ever believed that story, or if she ever tried to investigate further. She probably never realized how damned lucky she was.
Why was she lucky?
Are you serious? What if he hadn't reanimated in my clinic? What if he'd managed to make it all the way home?
Is that possible?
Of course it is. Think about it. Because the infection started in the heart, the virus had direct access to his circulatory system, so it probably reached his brain seconds after it was implanted. Now, you take another organ, a liver or a kidney, or even a section of grafted skin. That's going to take a lot longer, especially if the virus is only present in small amounts.
But the donor...
Doesn't have to be fully reanimated. What if he's just newly infected? The organ may not be completely saturated. It might only have an infinitesimal trace. You put that organ in another body, it might take days, weeks, before it eventually works its way out into the bloodstream. By that point, the patient might be well on the way to recovery, happy and healthy, and living a regular life.
But whoever is removing the organ...
may not know what he's dealing with. I didn't. These were the very early stages when nobody knew anything yet, even if they did know, like elements in the Chinese army. You want to talk about immoral? Years before the outbreak, they'd been making millions on organs from executed political prisoners. You think something like a little virus is going to make them stop sucking that golden tit?
But how...
You remove the heart not long after the victims died, maybe even while he's still alive. They used to do that, you know. Remove living organs to ensure their freshness. Pack it in ice, put it on a plane for Rio. China used to be the largest exporter of human organs on the world market. Who knows how many infected corneas, infected pituitary glands. Mother of God, who knows how many infected kidneys they pumped into the global market. And that's just the organs. You want to talk about the donated eggs from political prisoners, the sperm, the blood? You think immigration was the only way the infection swept the planet? Not all the initial outbreaks were Chinese nationals. Can you explain all those stories of people suddenly dying of unexplained causes, then reanimating without ever having been bitten? Why did so many outbreaks begin in hospitals? Illegal Chinese immigrants weren't going to hospitals. Do you know how many thousands of people got illegal organ transplants in those early years leading up to the Great Panic? Even if 10% of them were infected, even 1%.
Do you have any proof of this theory?
No, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen. When I think about how many transplants I performed, all those patients from Europe, the Arab world, even the self-righteous United States, few of you Yankees asked where your new kidney or pancreas was coming from, be it a slum kid from the city of God or some unlucky student in a Chinese political prison. You didn't know, you didn't care, you just signed your traveler's checks, went under the knife, then went home to Miami or New York or wherever.
Did you ever try to track these patients down? Warn them?
No, I didn't. I was trying to recover from a scandal, rebuild my reputation, my client base, my bank account. I wanted to forget what happened, not investigate it further. By the time I realized the danger, it was scratching at my front door.
Bridgetown Harbor, Barbados. West Indies Federation of PEM, or proton exchange membrane fuel cells, a technology that converts seawater into electricity. It is easy to see why the prefix IS stands for Infinity Ship. Hailed as the undisputed future of maritime transport, it is still rare to see one sailing under anything but a government flag. The Mfingo is privately owned and operated. Jacob Nyathi is her captain.
I was born about the same time as the new post-apartheid South Africa. In those euphoric days, the new government not only promised the democracy of one man, one vote, but employment and housing to the entire country. My father thought that meant immediately. He didn't understand that these were long-term goals to be achieved after years, generations of hard work. He thought that if we abandoned our tribal homeland and relocated to a city, there would be a brand new house and high-paying jobs just sitting there, waiting for us. My father was a simple man, a day laborer. I can't blame him for his lack of formal education, his dream of a better life for his family. And so we settled in Kailicha, one of the 4 main townships outside of Cape Town. It was a life of grinding, hopeless, humiliating poverty. It was my childhood. The night it happened, I was walking home from the bus stop. It was around 5 a.m., and I just finished my shift waiting tables at the TGI Fridays at Victoria Wharf. It had been a good night. The tips were big, and news from the Tri-Nations was enough to make any South African feel 10 feet tall. The Springboks were trouncing the All Blacks. Again.
He smiles with the memory.
Maybe those thoughts were what distracted me at first. Maybe it was simply being so knackered. But I felt my body instinctively react before I consciously heard the shots. Gunfire was not unusual, not in my neighborhood, not in those days. One man, one gun. That was the slogan of my life in Kailicha. Like a combat veteran, you develop almost genetic survival skills. Mine were razor sharp. I crouched, tried to triangulate the sound, and at the same time look for the hardest surface to hide behind. Most of the homes were just makeshift shanties, wood scraps or corrugated tin, or just sheets of plastic fastened to barely standing beams. Fire ravaged these lean-tos at least once a year, and bullets could pass through them as easily as open air. I sprinted and crouched behind a barber shop, which had been constructed from a car-sized shipping container. It wasn't perfect, but it would do for a few seconds, long enough to hole up and wait for the shooting to die down. Only it didn't. Pistols, shotguns, and that clatter you never forget, the kind that tells you someone has a Kalashnikov. This was lasting much too long to be just an ordinary gang row. Now there were screams, shouts. I began to smell smoke. I heard the stirrings of a crowd. I peeked out from around the corner. Dozens of people, most of them in their night clothes, all shouting, "Run! Get out of there! They're coming!" House lamps were lighting all around me, faces poking out of shanties. "What's going on here?" they asked. "Who's coming?" Those were the younger faces. The older ones, they just started running. They had a different kind of survival instinct, an instinct born in a time when they were slaves in their own country. In those days, everyone knew who they were, and if they were ever coming, all you could do was run and pray.
Did you run?
I couldn't. My family, my mother and 2 little sisters, lived only a few doors down from the Radio Zibonele station, exactly where the mob was fleeing from. I wasn't thinking. I was stupid. I should have doubled back around, found an alley or quiet street. I tried to wade through the mob, pushing in the opposite direction. I thought I could stay along the sides of the shanties. I was knocked into one of their plastic walls that wrapped around me as the whole structure collapsed. I was trapped. I couldn't breathe. Someone ran over me, smashed my head into the ground. I shook myself free, wriggled and rolled out into the street. I was still on my stomach when I saw them, 10 or 15, silhouetted against the fires of the burning shanties. I couldn't see their faces, but I could hear them moaning. They were slouching steadily toward me with their arms raised. I got to my feet. My head swam. My body ached all over. Instinctively, I began to withdraw, backing into the doorway of the closest shack. Something grabbed me from behind, pulled at my collar, tore the fabric. I spun, ducked, and kicked hard. He was large, larger and heavier than me by a few kilos. Black fluid ran down the front of his white shirt. A knife protruded from his chest, jammed between the ribs and buried to the hilt. A scrap of my collar, which was clenched between his teeth, dropped as his lower jaw fell open. He growled. He lunged. I tried to dodge. He grabbed my wrist. I felt a crack, and pain shot up through my body. I dropped to my knees, tried to roll and maybe trip him up. My hand came up against a heavy cooking pot. I grabbed it and swung hard. It smashed into his face. I hit him again and again, bashing his skull until the bones split open and the brain spilled out across my feet. He slumped over. I freed myself, just as another one of them appeared in the entrance. This time the structure's flimsy nature worked to my advantage. I kicked the back wall open, slinking out and bringing the whole hut down in the process. I ran. I didn't know where I was going. It was a nightmare of shacks and fire and grasping hands all racing past me. I ran through a shanty where a woman was hiding in the corner. Her 2 children were huddled against her, crying. "Come with me," I said. "Please, come, we have to go." I held out my hands, moved closer to her. She pulled her children back, brandishing a sharpened screwdriver. Her eyes were wide, scared. I could hear sounds behind me, smashing through shanties, knocking them over as they came. I switched from Xhosa to English. "Please," I begged. "You have to run." I reached for her, but she stabbed my hand. I left her there. I didn't know what else to do. She is still in my memory, when I sleep or maybe close my eyes sometimes. Sometimes she's my mother, and the crying children are my sisters. I saw a bright light up ahead, shining between the cracks in the shanties. I ran as hard as I could. I tried to call to them. I was out of breath. I crashed through the wall of a shack, and suddenly I was in open ground. The headlights were blinding. I felt something slam into my shoulder. I think I was out before I even hit the ground. I came to in a bed at Groot Schuur Hospital. I'd never seen the inside of a recovery ward like this. It was so clean and white. I thought I might be dead. The medication, I'm sure, helped that feeling. I'd never tried any kind of drugs before, never even touched a drink of alcohol. I didn't want to end up like so many in my neighborhood, like my father. All my life, I'd fought to stay clean, and now. The morphine or whatever they had pumped into my veins was delicious. I didn't care about anything. I didn't care when they told me the police had shot me in the shoulder. I saw the man in the bed next to me frantically wheeled out as soon as his breathing stopped. I didn't even care when I overheard them talking about the outbreak of rabies.
Who was talking about it?
I don't know. Like I said, I was as high as the stars. I just remember voices in the hallway outside my ward, loud voices, angrily, arguing. "That wasn't rabies," one of them yelled. "Rabies doesn't do that to people." Then something else. Then, well, what the hell do you suggest? We've got 15 downstairs right here. Who knows how many more are still out there? It's funny. I go over that conversation all the time in my head. What I should have thought, felt, done. It was a long time before I sobered up again, before I woke up and faced the nightmare.
Tel Aviv, Israel. Jürgen Warmbrunn has a passion for Ethiopian food, which is our reason for meeting at a falasha restaurant. With his bright pink skin and white, unruly eyebrows that match his Einstein hair, he might be mistaken for a crazed scientist or college professor. He is neither. Although never acknowledging which Israeli intelligence service he was, and possibly still is, employed by, he openly admits that at one point he could be called a spy.
Most people don't believe something can happen until it already has. That's not stupidity or weakness. That's just human nature. I don't blame anyone for not believing. I don't claim to be any smarter or better than them. I guess what it really comes down to is the randomness of birth. I happen to be born into a group of people who live in constant fear of extinction. It's part of our identity, part of our mindset, and it has taught us through horrific trial and error to always be on our guard.
The first warning I had of the plague was from our friends and customers over in Taiwan. They were complaining about our new software decryption program. Apparently it was failing to decode some emails from PRC sources, or at least decoding them so poorly that the text was unintelligible. I suspected the problem might not be in the software, but in the translated messages themselves. The mainland Reds, I guess they weren't really Reds anymore, but what do you want from an old man? The Reds had a nasty habit of using too many different computers from too many different generations and countries. Before I suggested this theory to Taipei, I thought it might be a good idea to review the scrambled messages myself. I was surprised to find the characters themselves were perfectly decoded, but the text itself, it all had to do with a new viral outbreak that first eliminated its victim, then reanimated his corpse into some kind of homicidal berserker. Of course, I didn't believe this was true, especially because only a few weeks later the crisis in the Taiwan Strait began, and any messages dealing with rampaging corpses abruptly ended. I suspected a second layer of encryption, a code within a code. That was pretty standard procedure, going back to the first days of human communication. Of course, the Reds didn't mean actual dead bodies. It had to be a new weapon system or ultra-secret war plan. I let the matter drop, tried to forget about it. Still, as one of your great national heroes used to say, my spider sense was tingling. Not long afterward, at the reception for my daughter's wedding, I found myself speaking to one of my son-in-law's professors from Hebrew University. The man was a talker, and he had a little too much to drink. He was rambling about how his cousin was doing some kind of work in South Africa, and had told him some stories about golems. You know about the golem, the old legend about a rabbi who breathes life into an inanimate statue? Mary Shelley stole the idea for her book Frankenstein. I didn't say anything at first, just listened. The man went on blathering about how these golems weren't made from clay, nor were they docile and obedient. As soon as he mentioned reanimating human bodies, I asked for the man's number. It turns out he had been in Cape Town on one of those adrenaline tours, shark feeding, I think it was.
He rolls his eyes.
Apparently the shark had obliged him, right in the toches, which is why he had been recovering at Route Sur when the first victims of Khayelitsha Township were brought in. He hadn't seen any of these cases firsthand, but the staff had told him enough stories to fill my old dictaphone. I then presented his stories along with those decrypted Chinese emails to my superiors. And this is where I directly benefited from the unique circumstances of our precarious security. In October of 1973, when the Arab sneak attack almost drove us into the Mediterranean, we had all the intelligence in front of us, all the warning signs, and we had simply dropped the ball. We had never considered the possibility of an all-out, coordinated, conventional assault from several nations, certainly not on our holiest of holidays. From 1973 onward, if 9 intelligence analysts came to the same conclusion, it was the duty of the 10th to disagree. No matter how unlikely or far-fetched a possibility might be, one must always dig deeper. If a neighbor's nuclear power plant might be used to make weapons-grade plutonium, you dig. If a dictator was rumored to be building a cannon so big it could fire anthrax shells across whole countries, you dig. And if there was even the slightest chance that dead bodies were being reanimated as ravenous killing machines, you dig and dig until you struck the absolute truth. And that is what I did. I dug. At first it wasn't easy. With China out of the picture, the Taiwan crisis put an end to any intelligence gathering. I was left with very few sources of information. A lot of it was chaff, especially on the Internet. Zombies from space and Area 51. What is your country's fetish for Area 51 anyway? After a while, I started to uncover more useful data. Cases of rabies similar to Cape Town. It wasn't called African rabies until later. I uncovered the psychological evaluations of some Canadian mountain troops recently returned from Kyrgyzstan. I found the blog records of a Brazilian nurse who told her friends all about the murder of a heart surgeon. The majority of my information came from the World Health Organization. The UN is a bureaucratic masterpiece. So many nuggets of valuable data buried in mountains of unread reports. I found incidents all over the world, all of them dismissed with plausible explanations. These cases allowed me to piece together a cohesive mosaic of this new threat. The subjects in question were indeed dead. They were hostile, and they were undeniably spreading. Given their global nature, I thought it might be prudent to seek confirmation from foreign intelligence circles. Paul Knight had been a friend of mine for a long time, going all the way back to Entebbe. The idea to use a double of Amin's black Mercedes, that was him. Paul had retired from government service right before his agency's reforms and gone to work for a private consulting firm in Bethesda, Maryland. When I visited him at his home, I was shocked to find that not only had he been working on the very same project on his own time, of course, but that his file was almost as thick and heavy as mine. We sat up the whole night reading each other's findings. Neither of us spoke. I don't think we were even conscious of each other, the world around us, anything except the words before our eyes. We finished almost at the same time, just as the sky began to lighten in the east. Paul turned the last page, then looked to me and said very matter-of-factly, "This is pretty bad, huh?" I nodded. So did he. And then followed up with, "So, what are we going to do about it?"
And that is how the Worm Run Night report was written.
I wish people would stop calling it that. There were 15 other names on that report: virologists, intelligence operatives, military analysts, journalists, even one UN observer who had been monitoring the elections in Jakarta when the first outbreak hit Indonesia. Everyone was an expert in his or her field. Everyone had come to their own similar conclusions before ever being contacted by us. Our report was just under 100 pages long. It was concise. It was fully comprehensive. It was everything we thought we needed to make sure this outbreak never reached epidemic proportions. I know a lot of credit has been heaped upon the South African war plan, and deservedly so. But if more people had read our report and worked to make its recommendations a reality, then that plan would have never needed to exist.
But some people did read and follow your report. Your own government.
Barely. And just look at the cost.
Stay tuned for part 2 of the Rocket Radio Show special broadcast of World War Z. Remember, like and follow.
The tisket, a tasket, the scarecrow's out his casket. Turn out the lights and lock the door, praying that he passes.
A vision of the dead in the inbred or backwoods. Motherfucker born inside a tool shed. Mama never loved me, never paid me no attention. Daddy was a rapist, 30 years upstate, Fulton County prison. And I was raised by my own will, surviving off of scraps and bones, bear traps and roadkill. Spending my days and my nights all alone, and my mind is gone. There's something wrong with my dome. They should've put me in the tomb. I didn't ask for this life when they cut me out the womb with a dull pocket knife. Now I walk with a sight and a murderous ability. A corn-fed motherfucker filled with hostility. Cracked out and I'm gone off that moonshine. 180 proof wine made from a muscadine. Out in these cornfields, learning all these wicked skills. Swinging, slicing, chopping, dicing, country boy born to kill. A demon spawn, the child of a bastard son. 7 born to 7, and the 7th child fathered one. So black, full of pain. Bodies in the field, blood pouring like rain. A demon spawn, the child of a bastard son. 7 born to 7, and the 7th child fathered one. So black, full of pain. Bodies in the field, blood pouring like rain. Don't get lost in the woods in your black expedition on the dark dirt road, so suspicious. Just trees and ditches, headlights flicker and it's got you turning switches. Now you're so damn scared about the shit in your britches. You can't think straight, all you hear is heavy breathing. All your eyes just deceiving what it is that you're seeing. When I pull up in the 8-4, pistol in the flowboat, blast out your back glass, got you screaming no, no. You're fitting to know the reason and you're about to find out what it is to suffer with a rusted blade in your mouth. Nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, being stalked by the scarecrow, the bloodline of Malachi. I hear these voices talking, they won't leave me alone. Tell me snatch this bitch up by her hair and drag her home. Over my shoulder in the back of a pickup truck, can't wait to get her home and hold her, bleed her, then chop her up. A demon spawn, the child of a bastard son. 7 born to 7, and the 7th child fathered one. So black, full of pain. Bodies in the field, blood pouring like rain. A demon spawn, the child of a bastard son. 7 born to 7, and the 7th child fathered one. So black, full of pain. Bodies in the field, blood pouring like rain. Tisket, a tasket, the scarecrow's out his casket. Turn out the lights and lock the door, praying that he passes.
A tisket, a tasket, the scarecrow's out his casket. Turn out the lights and lock the doors, praying that he passes. A tisket, a tasket, the scarecrow's out his casket. Turn out the lights and lock the doors, praying that he passes. A tisket, a tasket, the scarecrow's out his
You are now listening to a Rocket Radio Show broadcast.
You're rolling? We're rolling? Yeah, we're good. This is John Wannick of the Resistance. I don't know how far this broadcast will reach. They've taken the city. They're trying to erase us. Now more than ever, we need you to act. And if you're receiving this message, you've been recruited. Welcome to the fight, Patriot. Yeah, fight! Our enemies are moving in, and they anticipate us not having the numbers to resist. It is up to you to prove them wrong. Get this message out, and wake up the Patriots! I don't need to remind you what would happen should we fail. One of these days could be our last. By helping and taking action and contributing to the cause, you'll be remembered as taking a stand against the gray state before it completely destroys everything we know. They're inside! Most of us die pointlessly and are forgotten. Do you really want to die without making a sound? Either stand now or kneel forever! You alright? You coming? He's dead. Keep rolling! There are only days left. The gloves are off, the safeties are off. If you're looking for a sign, this is it. Diplomacy is over. War is here. If we don't make this happen, history will not remember us!